Now we're going to start exploring functions using technology. And it's very easy to do, and I will show you how to do that. In this example, we're going to take a function that maybe we can't see in the standard viewing window and talk about how to create an appropriate table of values for the function and to set a viewing window based on that. So in this example, we're going to use technology to create a table of function values for the function f, denoted by f of x equal 1/2 x squared minus 21x minus 275. Okay, so I'm going to go to Desmos, www.desmos.com. There are many online graphing calculators that you can use. Another common one that people like is GeoGebra, but I'll use Desmos here. So I'm going to just type in f of x equal to 1/2 x squared. You can use a caret key to raise things to powers. Minus 21x. You notice in Desmos, as I'm typing, it graphs whatever comes. So right now it's graphing 1/2 x squared minus 21x. If I subtract 275, then all of a sudden I don't see anything at all, right? So it doesn't mean that the graph isn't there. It just means that in this viewing window, which is a standard, kind of -10 to 10 in all directions kind of thing, maybe not quite -10 to 10 vertically there, but I can't see it in this window, right? So there's a lot of zoom features and things, and if you're on a touch screen, these graphing calculators are so dynamic. You can just use your fingers and things. But the problem at hand said, let's create a table of values. So I want to show you how to do that. If you go to this little gear thing, it says edit list there. If I just click on that, and you'll notice a little table that pops up right next to the function. So click on that little table icon, and all of a sudden it will give us a table of values. And the default is -2 to 2, right? And this may or may not be a good reference point for us. One of the things, if you're creating a table of values that is going to show some key features of a function, one of the recommendations I have to get a good feel for, how to set a window so you see something, is to ask yourself, well, what's the y-intercept? If I let x be 0, what is that? So in this table of values, it says it's -275, right? And I'm also noticing that this is a parabola, right? It's a quadratic function. So, and the leading coefficient is positive, and so it's going to open up. And I'm noticing that for all of these values in the given table, the y values are decreasing, right? They're getting more and more negative. -231, -253.5, -275, -295.5, -315. And I know that because this is a parabola, it's going to have a vertex point at some point. So I'm just getting the decreasing part of the parabola, and I want to get some of the increasing part of it too. So I want to change this so that I can see more of that, okay? And so I'm going to scale, I'm thinking I want to scale this more than just by ones. You can go down to the bottom and just hit enter and you can get as many values as you want, but I'm going to change this. I'm going to start, actually I think I'm going to start this at 0 and just change up these values. So I'm going to say, let's do this by 10. So I'm going to have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and if you just hit enter, once you establish that pattern, it will just keep going like that, right? So once you kind of replace the initial values that it gives you, so that's kind of nice. So we could have as many of these as we want, right? So maybe I could go down to 80, let's say. Okay, so so I notice I'm decreasing here. At 10, I'm at -435. At 20, -495. So I keep decreasing. And then at 30, I'm less negative, right? I go from -495 to -455, right? And then I kind of keep going back up from there. Okay. I don't know exactly what the vertex is based on this table, but I have a sense of it, right? So I'm just going to go to the graph settings. You can use the zoom in and zoom out features as well to get there. Like I said, if you're on a touch screen, you can even use your fingers. Just because we did a table here, I'm going to go to the graph settings just to show you what's here, because you can manually change the limits on the x-axis and on the y in this way. So I'm going to change the x-axis based on what we're seeing here to I think I do want some of the negative values too. Even though I started my table at the y-axis, I think I want to see some of the negative ones too. So maybe negative 20, and the x values, gosh, I went out here to 80. Okay, so already you can see that I'm seeing something, and then my y-axis, I know that the vertex is down around negative 495, and I want to make sure that I see it all because I don't know that that for sure is the vertex. So I might say negative 600 to um, now with the y-axis, I like to see something above the x-axis too. So I might say I don't know, 50 or so, just so we can see the axes clearly here. Okay, so let's get out of that. Okay, so this is a pretty good window for that graph, okay? The problem was asking us to set a good possible viewing window. And in this case, you want to set the viewing window so you can see all the main features of the graph. In this case, we had a parabola, so I knew that minimally I wanted to see the vertex and some points on either side of that. Okay. Looking at what we did in Desmos, I want to fill in what we were asked to do in this problem. So we were to create a table of function values for the function f, and I changed up the scale on the x from being incremented by 1 to being incremented by 10. You can do it by 100, you can do it by 0.2, you can do it by anything you want or that you feel is appropriate. I knew that I needed to get some more values to be able to see where that vertex point was on this parabola. So I'm just going to fill in a few, and I want to make sure I include that minimum point. And we didn't find the minimum point, right? So Desmos actually has denoted the points that we did find, right? So we don't exactly have the vertex point on our parabola, but we have enough points that we get a good sense of the graph. All right, so I'm going to say 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and what were those values? Negative 275, negative 435, negative 495, negative 455, and negative 315. Okay. So whatever values you pick for the table, just make sure that they're values that are going to show the main features of the graph, right? And then in this one it says use the table to create an appropriate viewing window for f. Okay, so I could set the x values just as what I chose in the table here, and it would be a very appropriate window. I set them a little bit higher than what I showed in the table when I actually graphed it because I like to see the axes. So what did I set it to be? I set it at negative 20, at least what we're seeing here. I think I set it to 80, but I'll set it to 60 here. Pretty appropriate. Okay, so with the y-interval at the low end, I set it at negative 600, even though I knew that that was below the vertex. I wanted to be able to see the vertex clearly in the graph, so I set it a little bit lower. And then again, I kind of like to see the axes in my graph, so I set it up at 50 as a maximum for the y value. Okay.